Alright, so 4 things are needed to make rye sourdough bread. We need flour, we need sourdough, and we need some grain, and we need water, or liquid at least. This recipe calls for 275 grams of whole rye and 100 grams of rye kibble. Of course we can't get whole rye, so this will be 375 grams of kibble. We also want water, and the recipe wants 1 liter. And 2 tablespoons of salt, which seems excessive, so I normally just do a couple of teaspoons. Boil the grains, makes them easy to chew, about 10 minutes. Second ingredient is the flour. Now we don't really need this particular type of bread, so we use hydrolysis instead, which means folding the dough. The recipe calls for 400 grams of rye, 300 grams of spelt. I usually, of wheat flour. I usually switch them around. So we use 300 grams of rye. Those. And 400 grams of spelt. Spelt because it has slightly lower gluten. Close enough. I fold this with about half a liter of water, which means that we will have more water than the recipe calls for. We'll fix that with more flour tomorrow. So the result is a pretty dry flour or dough that can sit overnight and let the gluten stretch. We'll cover it in a wet towel and continue tomorrow. So that's what the hydrolyzed flour looks like. And there's the grains after soaking for a day. So we take our sourdough. This one is 4 or 5 years old, I think. Mostly rye. Lots of spelt. There might be some wheat in it. Usually I use about half. The recipe calls for 300 grams, I think. But I try to make enough room in the jar so that I can rebuild it. It's nice and foamy, almost fluffy. That's 300 grams. That's 1/3 of it. Give it a bit more. Okay, 600 grams is half this jar. So a bit more than the recipe asks for. Here it goes. It has a slightly acidic, slightly berry, slightly yeasty smell. We take our grains, quite dense. Mix that in a little at a time. As before, we mostly just fold it over. The sourdough, when I use them, I usually feed them once or twice a day. Just, I don't know, maybe 100 mils of flour and 100 mils of water. And usually I alternate between the flours in the sourdough. So in this case, spelt and rye. I have one that's spelt, and I also have one that's another mix. This one, for some reason, is not super active. It has never been. I have another spelt and rye one that's crazy. I don't have it here. And I have a spelt one that's more sort of in between. since I'm away for long periods, then they usually sit for weeks and months without being fed in the fridge. That doesn't kill them, they just go into a spore stage. So when you need to use them again, pour off the alcohol on top and just start it at room temperature, start feeding them again until they come back alive. And now the lucky little bugs are getting a big boost of fresh flour to eat, so hopefully they are good and happy. We're going to make some bread out of this. It tends to get pretty dense because there's a lot of not that much gluten, if really any, in spent flour. No, not much at least, so it gets a bit on the dense side. If you want to have a lighter bread, then use wheat. Just don't use just like wholemeal. Don't use the fine stuff. It does make a very fine bread, but you also get a lot of gluten. If that's not your thing. Here we go. And there's the dough. Now let it sit for a day, or rather until tonight. Now, there's a couple of more ingredients missing, including one important one that really should sit and gas off during the day, and get to room temperature as well. We don't want to shock the poor little yeasties. The one ingredient that will give it a bit more savoriness. So we're going to sacrifice one of these. Good old Guinness to the course. There you go. And it can just, cheers, you can just sit for a day. And wet the towel, and you can, and then we'll get back to this tonight. Like that. Look at the spread. Let's see what it has come to, if it has risen any. Hard to tell, probably not much. A little bit. It should be better for tonight. So the first thing we do is add the beer. The beer has been sitting since this morning. In it goes. And then we add the grain. So 200 grams of flax, 200 grams of sunflower seeds, but I do like to have pumpkin seeds in it, so I will split it up into 133 gram portions instead. And we add about 100 grams of rye kibble, just for getting a little bit of crunch back into it. 133 grams of pumpkin seeds. Plus minus. Turn it in with the beer. Another 33 grams of sunflower seeds. And the flakes. And then 20 grams of flakes. A little more of the sunflower seeds. And 100 grams of rye kibble. And that's a bit wet. So let's heat up some of these bags of flour. Prefer to use spit to dry out the dough a bit. That's rye just tastes good, but it turns everything into cement. It's not a dough you can knead. It will always be soft, but it doesn't have to be this soft. A little bit more, but it's starting to lose the shine, so it's probably close to a good consistency. Here we go. Still very soft, but this is a good consistency. The final product will often seem a bit wet as well, but that just makes it even better when you toast it. And cover it up again. let it sit until tomorrow morning, when it will be put in tins and let rest for the last stage. There we go. And that's it for today. Alright, day 3 and baking day. This is after the bread has been sitting for overnight to raise. It has certainly come up a little bit, sticking to the cloth. See, it's bubbling nicely. Lots of air holes, so it should be relatively fluffy. Now we want to put it in tins, and the first thing we do is pop a bit back into the sourdough, so you can keep that going. Spoonful or so is usually enough. Close that one off, and you can go back into the fridge. It can stay for a few months until next I bake. Now I used to do this with butter when I grease the tins, but that's less necessary now, as if you want to entirely avoid having any kind of dairy in it, olive oil works just fine. The oven temperature never comes above 180 degrees, so don't get any problems with the smoking. And also you end up with a bread that's dairy-free, kosher if you want, minus the beer perhaps. Basically just made out of water and grain and flour. Even the yeast itself is based on the same flours that is used in the bread itself. 2 tins may be enough, but if not, we have a third. Let's go with a third. think if I had followed the recipe to the letter, 2 would have been the portion size, but since I added 50% more water, I also ended up adding 50% more flour. There you go. 3 bread. Now these can then sit for up to about 4 hours or the rest of the day if the day is busy, and then be baked. It's now about 5 hours since we put the bread in its tins, so let's see what it looks like now. Like sticky goodness. So again, they have grown some. We don't really want them to be hugely bigger than this because the shape of this tin make them very awkward in the oven. First thing to do is to scar them a bit, so hopefully they don't break too much when they rise in the oven, which by the way has been pre-warmed to 175 degrees Celsius. And that's about 3 million degrees Fahrenheit. Next step is to baste them, and in the spirit of not using any dairy, then this will be a water and olive oil basting. Water in itself might be enough. I've used water before and just plain buns and such. But not many things take any damage from having a little olive oil added. Go. And here we are, they are in. One is at the top, because unfortunately the oven is not quite the right size. Right. No. Time for first basting after they went in. Looks like they're browning up nicely. Want to be quick about these so they don't fall. Right, we are now 30 minutes in. Look like they're browning nicely. Do the last basting of the surface, and then, because I have to move them up and down in the oven so they get not either burned or undercooked, I will give them 45 minutes. The bread has now been sitting in the oven for a couple of hours, cooled down a bit. So let's take them out and see how they're doing. They're looking pretty good, if a little bit on the dark side. Consistency. That looks pretty good. Normally this is a bit early to actually cut them, but but one, I'm hungry, and two, it tastes really nice when they are very fresh. Some of that freshness you can get back by just toasting them slightly before eating them. So let's try a slice. See what it looks like. Here we go. Looking pretty good. Fresh is very good with cheese or maybe some butter. Yum. It's very soft. It'll firm up overnight. But right now, it's time to eat it. Right, it's morning after the baking, and the bread has now been resting overnight. Let's see what it's like. Yeah, that will be the final product. It will be packed away now. So that's pretty much the recipe. Maybe half an hour to an hour of actual work, and then maybe 2 hours in the oven. It's be spread over 3 or 4 days. Looks soft, grains are moist. There are lots of grains in it. You can see it retains a little bit of springiness. If you want it more springy, use wheat instead of spelt. Maybe use 70% wheat flour to 30% rye. I've seen people using food coloring to make it stay dark if they use a lot of light flour in it, but I think the important thing here is it's a good grainy, fiber-rich, nutrition-rich bread with no added dairy or anything else. So that's it.